America has a problem. The federal funds used to pay for U.S. roads and bridges is set to run out of money next month. Both the White House and Congress have offered solutions, but so far, there's no agreements. Now, local governments and the state will have to curb public work projects. In the meantime, the pain will be particularly acute in the state of Pennsylvania, which has the highest number of crumbling bridges in the country. Jessica Stone reports from the capital there, Harrisburg.
Drive across the Pennsylvania state line on any major roadway and you'll feel it.
It's not as good as Maryland. Maryland has better roads. It's pretty rough up here and it's smooth down there.
So you feel it when you come into the state?
You definitely do.
Well, you should be able to ride up the road without getting bounced around and your head bouncing off the roof in the truck there every now and then, which Pennsylvania is in pretty bad shape for that.
The average age of our bridge in Pennsylvania is 51 years old. So
it's not lost on Pennsylvania's transportation secretary that Pennsylvania has earned failing grades for the structural integrity of its bridges. Many of them are more than a century old. But it's his job to turn the region's infrastructure around.
Have you gotten past the place where you're sensitive when you hear people criticize the roads here?
I don't think you can ever get past it. I think the reality is we've made such a debate about this, about the cause is the lack of investment.
But Shoke's investment problems are about to get worse. The U.S. government sent the states this letter in May, warning the Federal Highway Trust Fund will go insolvent, causing delayed reimbursement in project funding. Pennsylvania gets about $1.5 billion a year in federal funds for road and bridge repairs.
It's a big risk. It's probably the biggest risk that I've told our legislature that they face on transportation funding is lack of action at the federal government.
Pennsylvania does have one ace in the hole. Last November, it agreed to raise $2.3 billion for road and bridge improvements by increasing the gas tax and other auto fees. But it wasn't easy. It took more than 3 years for Pennsylvania to pass its own transportation funding, and even then, it took a strong response from the business community, who reacted when they saw the state post 1,000 signs like this one, limiting traffic on bridges. Shoke says Washington is facing the same choices as Pennsylvania did: how to pay to upgrade an aging infrastructure so American drivers can stay safe on the roads.
We're a utility. We're basically utility, and access to the system is your registration and license fees. Your consumption charge, or how much you use, is your fuel charge. For now, I still think that's the most effective way to do it.
All right, welcome back. Jessica Stone is here in Washington, D.C. with me, and this is a terrible situation. What is the solution, or what's been proposed?
Well, there's a number of proposals, of course, in typical Washington fashion. The White House has offered a proposal that involves no gas taxes, and then there are about 2 or 3 House and Senate proposals, the most of which, or the majority of which, just got through one of the hurdles yesterday. The House advancing a $10.8 billion transfer to the fund. But it only goes through May 2015, and it doesn't use gas taxes either. Nobody wants to use the gas tax in an election year.
I think I know the answer to this, but the trust fund is supposed to be used to build bridges or fix bridges and so on. That money has run out over a long period of time. Why are we even talking about this? How did it get to this point? Because you know when it's going to run out of money, and of course now it's the last minute. But again, I'm going to let you explain.
This keeps happening in Washington too. This sort of tyranny of the urgent. But it was a 60-year-old idea, and it depended on the gas tax. But keep in mind, it was not pegged to inflation, and it relies on gas. So that means with more fuel-efficient vehicles, we're seeing less gas being purchased, less gas taxes being generated, less money going to the fund.
And there's a huge debate, right? But let's say you build a bridge from state A to state B. Should the federal government pay for it? Should state A pay for it? State B pay for it? Should the local cities pay for it? So nobody wants to pay for it, but everybody wants to chip in maybe a little bit.
And everybody wants to use it.
Yeah, and no one wants to pay the extra gas tax. So the question is who's ultimately responsible for fixing stuff?
Well, there is a maze of ways that this transportation stuff is funded in this country, and it's very different than, of course, planned economies where it would be the central government just saying, hey, fix it and it's done. It depends on the type of road, and I won't bore you with all of the details, but the bottom line is that if the federal government doesn't pass the extended funding, it will get passed on to state-level politicians, and that simply means no matter who's passing the law, ultimately the consumer the person driving on the road will be paying more.
And we haven't even gotten to the safety aspect of it. You know, if a bridge were to collapse, knock on wood.
We had it happen in Minnesota a few years ago.
Which is going to happen, and then the blame goes around because there's no money to fix everything. We can go on and on about this. Jessica Stone with a very important topic, and I'm sure we'll see some news on it in the next couple of days.
We hope so.
Okay, good. Thank you very